The nights are no longer cooling down, and that changes everything. America is heading into a stretch of overnight heat unlike anything this nation has seen before. Not just hot days, not just uncomfortable afternoons. The danger is happening while you sleep. The overnight lows, the temperatures your body relies on to recover, to breathe, to cool down, are refusing to drop. And right now, the data from the National Weather Service, NOAA's Climate Prediction Center, and the latest European and GFS model runs are all pointing to the same conclusion. This summer is going to be defined by nights that break records, nights that trap millions of Americans in dangerous heat without any relief. In this video, I am going to break down what is driving this, which cities are most at risk right now, what the 7-day forecast looks like day by day, the massive climate pattern fueling all of it, and then, the part I've been building toward, what a developing Super El Nino means for your summer, and why one of the world's top climate scientists just called this moment Code Red for the Earth's climate system. I am Arthur, this is Sky Space Lab. Let us get into the data. I have been watching this pattern build for weeks, and if you have not subscribed yet, I want you to do it right now, because what is happening to American overnight temperatures this summer is a story that is going to keep getting bigger, and you do not want to miss a single update. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications. We are going to track this together all summer long. Now let us go. Here is what is happening right now across the country. As of this morning, the National Weather Service has heat advisories stretching from central Kansas all the way through the southeast and up into parts of the mid-Atlantic. Heat index values in central and northeast Kansas are forecast to reach 107 degrees Fahrenheit during peak afternoon hours. Cities including Topeka, Manhattan, Junction City, and Lawrence are all directly in the zone of dangerous heat today. This is not a brief event. The advisory language from the National Weather Service states clearly that hot temperatures and high humidity may cause heat cramps, heat exhaustion, and even heat stroke. But here is where the story takes a turn, and it is the part that most channels are not telling you about. The daytime highs are dangerous, yes, but it is the overnight lows that are the real threat this week. When a heat dome settles in and the atmosphere cannot radiate heat away overnight, your body never gets relief. Scientists who study heat mortality have found that excess deaths during heat waves are more strongly linked to consecutive high nighttime minimums than to a single hot afternoon. Your body needs that overnight cooling window to reset. When it does not get it, the cumulative stress builds day after day, and right now, that recovery window is disappearing. Here is who needs to watch this the most. Memphis, Tennessee is looking at overnight lows staying above 75 degrees through the rest of this week. St. Louis, Missouri is not expected to dip below 73 degrees at any point over the next several nights. Chicago, Illinois is forecast to hold in the upper 60s and lower 70s overnight, highs of 96 degrees during the day with no meaningful relief after dark. Detroit, Michigan is entering its first sustained stretch of 90s or greater daytime highs this season, with lows locked between 68 and 72 degrees overnight. Raleigh and Charlotte in North Carolina are under an extreme heat risk for several consecutive days, with meteorologists warning explicitly of minimal overnight recovery. The National Weather Service used the phrase minimal overnight recovery in their discussion bulletins this week, and that phrase, in meteorology, is a red flag for public health. Updated just 1 hour ago, the Weather Prediction Center confirms that this heat dome will expand eastward through the remainder of this week, pushing dangerous conditions from the Central Plains through the mid-Atlantic and northeast. The most unusual heat is expected to impact the Great Lakes corridor on Wednesday, followed by New England on Thursday and Friday, where temperatures could run 10 to 20 degrees above normal. Do you feel the heat more at night than during the day? Drop your city and your overnight low in the comments right now. I want to hear from you. Now let us move into the 7-day outlook, because the picture the models are painting is remarkable. Today, Thursday the 19th of June, the heat dome is centered over the central United States. The most extreme conditions are in Kansas, Missouri, Iowa, and into the Tennessee Valley. The Weather Prediction Center is flagging heat index values up to 110 degrees across parts of eastern Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and Tennessee. Overnight lows tonight across much of this zone will not drop below 72 degrees. In urban cores, particularly New Orleans, Memphis, and Atlanta, overnight lows may stay above 76 degrees. Friday the 20th. The heat dome begins its march eastward. Chicago could touch 96 degrees for the second consecutive day. Indianapolis is forecast in the mid-90s. Columbus and Cincinnati in Ohio are both tracking low to mid-90s, with overnight lows holding in the mid-70s. This is now entering territory where record warm overnight minimums are possible across Indiana and Ohio. The National Weather Service noted that Indiana saw essentially no extreme heat through all of May. The heat stress residents are about to experience will feel more intense because it is early season. But here is where it gets really interesting, and I will show you exactly why in just a moment. Saturday the 21st. The heat spreads into the northeast and mid-Atlantic. Washington, D.C. approaches or exceeds 100 degrees. Philadelphia and New York City enter the mid to upper 90s. Boston, typically cooler this time of year, will see temperatures in the upper 80s and lower 90s with dew points in the 60s, creating real field temperatures approaching 100. Overnight lows in these cities will not dip below 70 degrees. For a city like Boston, a night that stays above 70 degrees is historically unusual at this point in June. Sunday the 22nd. The peak of this event across the northeast and New England. National Weather Service pattern modelling shows the heat dome elongating, flattening into what forecasters describe as a midsummer-like pattern, locking the heat in place rather than allowing a quick reset. Overnight lows across New York, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and southern New Hampshire may stay above 70 degrees for the second consecutive night. Record warm overnight minimums are possible from Bangor to Boston to Burlington. Monday the 23rd into Tuesday the 24th. Heat begins to slowly retreat from the northeast, but remains locked across the Ohio Valley and southeast. Temperatures stay above normal across Nashville, Atlanta, Charlotte, and Raleigh well into the final days of June. The Storm Prediction Center is watching for severe weather chances to emerge across the northern plains as a new trough approaches from the Pacific Northwest. Wednesday the 25th. The first signs of a frontal passage reach the northern tier, but the heat does not break quickly or cleanly. The Ohio Valley, Tennessee Valley, and southeast remain locked in above normal conditions. Overnight lows in Atlanta may hold in the mid-70s through the end of the month. Most channels are not showing you this part. The overnight temperature data is what matters most in a sustained heat event, and the 7-day pattern shows essentially no meaningful relief across a massive swathe of the country. Now let us step back and look at the big picture, because what is happening this week is not an isolated event. It is a signal. NOAA's Climate Prediction Center. Seasonal outlook has been consistent and unambiguous all year. Above normal temperatures are favored across the majority of the contiguous United States for the June through August period. The highest probabilities of above normal temperatures are anchored across the Central Great Basin, the Rockies, and the Southwest. But the signal extends east through the Southern Plains, the Gulf States, and the Southeast. June 2026 is already running warmer than normal by nearly 3 degrees Fahrenheit on average across the United States. Climate Impact Company, one of the private sector's most respected long-range forecasting groups, has flagged anomalous heat and mostly dry conditions across the Northwest as the leading signal for June, with that heat expected to expand to the Gulf States and Central Plains through midsummer. And then there is the nighttime warming data, and this is one of the most important stories in American meteorology right now. Climate Central, using more than 5 decades of weather station data from 241 locations across the United States, found that average summer nighttime temperatures have warmed in 231 of those cities since 1970, by an average of 3.1 degrees Fahrenheit. That might not sound like much, but in meteorology, a 3-degree shift in overnight minimums is enormous. It changes the thermodynamics of how a heatwave behaves, it changes how long dangerous heat stress persists in the body, and it changes how many people die. Reno, Nevada has seen its summer nighttime temperatures warm by 17.7 degrees Fahrenheit since 1970, Las Vegas by 10 degrees, El Paso, Texas by 8.9 degrees, Salt Lake City by 8.2 degrees. These cities are experiencing summer nights that would have been climatologically unrecognizable 50 years ago. The cities that have seen the largest increases in climate change-fueled warm summer nights are concentrated in Florida, where nighttime temperatures are running hotter and more frequently above normal than anywhere else in the country. Climate Central's analysis found that the average major American city now experiences about 27 warmer than normal summer nights, with a strong climate change fingerprint each year. In the 1970s, that number was 1. One warmer than normal night per year influenced by climate change. Now it is 27. That is not a small change. That is a transformation of what summer nights feel like for hundreds of millions of Americans. This is one of the strongest nighttime warming signals I have seen in the data in years, and the trajectory is not slowing down. The EPA projects that in many regions across the country, nighttime temperatures will remain above 70 degrees Fahrenheit more often going forward. That threshold matters because 70 degrees is roughly the point below which the human body begins its most effective overnight recovery from heat stress. When nights consistently hold above 70 degrees, not just occasionally, but as a new norm, the cumulative health burden compounds. Here is what is happening mechanically in the atmosphere. A building ridge of high pressure across the central and eastern United States is acting as a heat dome. High pressure forces air to subside, to sink. As it sinks, it compresses and warms. That sinking air acts as a lid, preventing normal overnight radiation cooling. The atmosphere cannot shed its heat. The land surface continues to release stored heat into the night air. Urban areas amplify this dramatically, because concrete and asphalt absorb heat during the day and release it after dark, what scientists call the urban heat island effect. Urban nighttime temperatures can run up to 22 degrees warmer than surrounding rural areas. The Weather West analysis published just 1 week ago described what is happening along the West Coast as nights that are considerably milder than usual, a phrase that understates the physical reality for millions of people. The West Coast marine heat wave, driven by the positive Pacific meridional mode, has been pushing an elevated baseline of warmth inland through coastal terrain gaps. This is not about extreme daytime spikes. It is about an elevated floor, nights that refuse to cool. Have you personally noticed your summer nights feeling hotter than they used to? Drop your city and your answer in the comments. I want to build a real-time picture of what viewers across the country are experiencing this week. Before we wrap up, there is one more thing you need to know, and this is the part I've been building toward: El Nino. And specifically, a developing super El Nino that is now being described by top atmospheric scientists as potentially historic in its scope and in its consequences for American heat this summer and well beyond. Let me give you the numbers, because they are extraordinary. NOAA's latest ENSO forecast places the probability of El Nino conditions developing this summer at 80%. That is high confidence. By April of 2026, ocean temperature anomalies in the eastern equatorial Pacific were already well above average off the coasts of South America and Ecuador, a clear and early signal. The European Centre for Medium-Range Weather Forecasts, the ECMWF, is now explicitly predicting that sea surface temperatures in the Nino 3.4 region may warm to 3 degrees Celsius, more than 5 degrees Fahrenheit, above average by November. Its latest ensemble model forecast for October 2026 depicts a massive area of anomalously warm water extending from central South America all the way north to the Pacific Northwest, and stretching west along the equator nearly to the maritime continent. The ECMWF is essentially forecasting a record-breaking El Niño event by autumn. Ryan Maue, a former chief scientist for NOAA, reviewed this updated El Niño forecast and called it off the charts extreme. He called it code red for the Earth's climate system going into summer 2026. That is not cable news hyperbole. That is a former chief scientist of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Here is what that means for you and your area. El Niño shifts atmospheric circulation across the entire planet. When a strong El Niño is present, the subtropical jet stream over the southern United States becomes significantly more enhanced. That enhances moisture transport, intensifies storm tracks, and, critically, raises the baseline of temperatures. Carbon Brief's State of the Climate analysis projects that 2026 is likely to be the second warmest year on record globally. 2026 is virtually certain to rank among the 4 warmest years ever measured in the instrumental record. But the peak impact is not happening right now. There is a lag. El Niño tends to build over spring and summer and deliver its strongest atmospheric consequences starting in late summer, intensifying through fall and into winter. Forecasters referencing the developing signal project at least 2 intense heat waves for New England, an uptick in humidity extending into early fall, and warmer, muggy nights heading through much of September. Those are conditions that Boston and the Northeast have not historically had to contend with in mid-September. For the northern United States and Canada broadly, El Niño historically brings drier and warmer conditions. For the Gulf Coast and the southeast, it brings more precipitation and flooding risk. NOAA's CPC seasonal outlook reflects exactly that pattern. Above normal precipitation favoured for the southeastern Florida, while the northern tier bakes. AccuWeather's long-range team, led by expert forecaster Paul Pastelok, is projecting that above normal humidity will boost feels-like temperatures during the day across the northeast and contribute to warmer nights. The added humidity is not a byproduct of occasional storms, it is structural. It is being driven into the region by the same atmospheric pattern enhancing the subtropical jet stream, and it is not going away this summer. The Severe Weather Europe long-range team, using the ECMWF and UK Met Office systems, has described what they are seeing in the August through October period as a significant El Nino anomaly across the tropical and northern Pacific, values exceeding +2 degrees across the entire ENSO region, consistent with the Super El Nino event. They note that this developing Super El Nino is expected to act as a natural shield during the 2026 Atlantic hurricane season, by injecting wind shear into the Caribbean and the main development region. But the flip side of that shear, the heat and moisture redistribution, flows directly into the continental United States. WeatherWest climatologist Daniel Swain, in a major special update published just 1 week ago, flagged an 88% likelihood of a strong El Nino event by autumn or early winter, and a 63% probability of a very strong event. He was explicit about what it means for nights. Warm weather from roughly late summer 2026 through at least the first half of 2027. This is not a summer story, this is a multi-season story. Here are the locations most at risk in the next 48 to 72 hours. Phoenix, Arizona is already approaching overnight lows that would historically be records for early summer. The NWS Phoenix Forecast Office has used the phrase minimal overnight recovery in its discussions, language that for that climate signals an unusual event even by desert standards. Las Vegas, Nevada, whose summer nighttime temperatures have already warmed by 10 degrees Fahrenheit since 1970, is tracking toward overnight lows in the upper 80s to lower 90s during peak heat this summer. Reno, Nevada, the city with the most dramatic nighttime warming in the entire country at 17.7 degrees above 1970 baselines, will see summer nights that are simply climatologically unrecognizable compared to what residents experienced 1 generation ago. Dallas and Houston in Texas are both tracking above normal overnight minimums throughout June, July and August, based on the NOAA CPC outlook. Chicago is already in the stretch I described, lows in the upper 60s and lower 70s through the end of June. St. Louis will likely not see a night below 70 degrees through the next 14 days. Atlanta and Charlotte face an extreme heat risk across several consecutive days with minimal overnight recovery built into the forecast. Miami, Florida, which Climate Central ranks among the top 5 cities in the country for the fastest growing frequency of climate change-fueled warm summer nights, will see no meaningful change in overnight conditions this summer. The warm, muggy air flowing in from the tropics, combined with the urban heat island and the developing El Niño pattern, creates a wall of overnight heat that simply does not move. Rural America is not exempt. In fact, rural communities face a unique challenge. Urban residents have access to cooling centres, air-conditioned public buildings, neighbours who check in. Rural communities, especially in the Central Plains, the Deep South and Appalachia, often lack that infrastructure entirely. When overnight temperatures stay above 72 degrees for 4 or 5 consecutive nights, and a family is living without reliable air conditioning in a rural county in western Tennessee or eastern Arkansas, the danger compounds in ways that never make the national headlines, but they show up in the county health data weeks later. Extreme heat is the deadliest weather-related hazard in the United States. Not tornadoes, not hurricanes, not floods. Heat. Every single year, heat kills more Americans than any other weather event. The National Weather Service has stated this consistently for years. And what the developing pattern for summer 2026 is telling us, through the NOAA CPC seasonal outlook, through the ECMWF ensemble runs, through Climate Impact Company's monthly forecast, through Climate Central's 50-year data analysis, is that the conditions which drive those deaths are going to be more frequent, more intense, and more prolonged this summer than in any recent year. I want you to leave this video understanding one thing that is bigger than any single heat event or any single 7-day forecast. The floor is rising. That is the story. Not just the peaks, The daytime hundreds in Phoenix, the triple digits in Kansas City, the brutal humidity in Memphis. The floor, the overnight minimum, the temperature your body goes to sleep in, the temperature your apartment holds at 2 in the morning when you cannot sleep. The temperature that determines whether elderly neighbors, infants, people without air conditioning, outdoor workers, whether they recover or whether they do not. Climate Central's data tells us that the average American city now experiences 27 warmer than normal summer nights per year with a strong climate change fingerprint. In the 1970s, it was 1. This summer, with a developing super El Nino amplifying an already warm baseline, that number is going to be higher, and you are living it right now. The heat that kills is rarely the afternoon spike, it is the night that never cools. It is sleeping in an apartment that holds 80 degrees at midnight. It is waking up at 3 in the morning already sweating before the day has even started. It is the body that never gets to rest. If there is one person in your life, a parent, a neighbor, anyone without reliable air conditioning, check on them this week. Not because I am being dramatic. Because the National Weather Service, NOAA, AccuWeather, Climate Central, and every major atmospheric modeling center in the world are saying the same thing. This is a dangerous heat event, and the nights are not going to give you a break. Tomorrow I will be watching very closely as the heat dome expands toward the northeast, and the first signals of a new trough pushing in from the Pacific Northwest begin to show up in the northern plains. That transition sets up a severe weather window across the Dakotas, Nebraska, and Minnesota in the June 23rd through 25th timeframe, and I will walk you through every piece of it. If you found this video valuable, please hit the like button right now. It helps this channel reach the people who need this information. Subscribe if you're not already here, and drop your city and tonight's overnight low in the comments. I want to build a real map of what Americans are experiencing this week. Your local data matters. I read every single comment. Stay cool out there. Stay safe. Arthur, Sky Space Lab. I will see you tomorrow. And I want to go one more level deeper on what is happening in the atmosphere, because understanding the mechanism is what separates real meteorology from noise. The heat dome that is sitting over the central United States right now is not a simple high-pressure system. It is a blocking pattern. In the atmospheric science community, blocking is one of the most significant and most dangerous weather phenomena in the mid-latitudes. A blocking pattern occurs when the jet stream, that fast-moving river of air in the upper atmosphere that normally drives weather systems from west to east across the country, becomes amplified into large waves and then gets stuck. Instead of progressing, it stalls. The high-pressure system that builds beneath a blocking ridge does not move. It sits, it intensifies, and as it sits, the air beneath it sinks, compresses and heats. That is exactly what is happening right now. The current pattern features a strong upper-level ridge anchored over the central and eastern United States. The GFS Ensemble runs I reviewed this morning are all showing this ridge persisting through at least June 25th. The ECMWF Ensemble, which typically handles blocking patterns better than the GFS, is showing a similar signal, a ridge that is slow to break down and that maintains its grip on overnight temperatures well into the final days of June. This is the same mechanism that has produced every major American heatwave in recent memory. The 2021 Pacific Northwest heat dome that killed over 1,000 people in Oregon and Washington. The 2023 heat dome that produced the second hottest June in the American instrumental record. The 2024 events that put 160 million Americans under heat alerts on a single day in June. The updated latest run just came in, and it is fully consistent with what I have been saying. No meaningful relief in the overnight temperature pattern across the southeast Ohio Valley or mid-Atlantic before the end of this month. The atmospheric blocking is too well established for a frontal system to break through quickly. Here is why that matters for the specific threat I am tracking in this video. Each consecutive night that overnight temperatures remain elevated adds to the cumulative heat stress in the human body and in the built environment. An apartment building with a south-facing brick facade in Memphis or St. Louis absorbs heat all day. By sunset, the walls are radiating that stored energy into the indoor space. An air conditioning system running 8 hours a day can manage that load. But when overnight temperatures stay above 75 degrees for 3, 4, 5 consecutive nights, the building never fully cools. The air conditioning runs all night. The electricity demand on the grid never drops. And for the people in that building, especially the elderly and the very young, the body never gets the physiological recovery it needs. This is what the science on heat mortality consistently shows. When the National Weather Service issues language about minimal overnight recovery, they are not just describing an atmospheric condition, they are describing a public health emergency in slow motion. Here are the cities where I think the overnight story is going to be the biggest headline this week: Chicago, Illinois. The city sits on the western shore of Lake Michigan and normally benefits from an onshore lake breeze that keeps summer nights cooler than the surrounding inland areas. But when a heat dome is strong enough and deep enough, it suppresses that lake breeze effect. The GFS is showing overnight lows in Chicago staying in the upper 60s to lower 70s through June 22nd. For a city with several million residents and a significant population of elderly people in high-rise buildings that were not designed with extreme heat in mind, that is a serious threat. New York City. The urban heat island effect in New York is one of the strongest of any city in the United States. Central Park, which serves as the official temperature measurement location for the city, routinely records overnight minimums that are 5 to 8 degrees warmer than suburban areas. When the broader metropolitan area is already being pushed into the mid-70s overnight by the heat dome, the urban core, Lower Manhattan, the South Bronx, East Harlem, can see overnight lows in the upper 70s. That is tropical air mass territory for the first week of meteorological summer. Philadelphia. A city with a very high proportion of older housing stock, much of it without central air conditioning, and a significant low-income population that relies on window units or fans. When overnight lows stay above 70 degrees, as forecast for this Saturday and Sunday, the mortality risk in those neighborhoods rises measurably. Washington, D.C. The nation's capital is notorious in the climate science community for its combination of high ambient heat, significant urban heat island effect, and a political establishment that has historically been slow to treat heat as the emergency it is. This weekend's forecast for Washington includes daytime highs potentially approaching or exceeding 100 degrees Fahrenheit, with overnight lows in the mid to upper 70s. That is one of the more extreme early summer heat events the city has seen. Nashville, Tennessee. Daytime highs in the mid to upper 90s through the end of the month, with overnight lows not expected to drop below 72 degrees for at least the next 10 days. Nashville has seen significant population growth over the past decade, with a large influx of residents from cooler climates who may not have the physiological acclimatization or the cultural experience of managing extreme heat. Atlanta, Georgia. Already under an extreme heat risk from the National Weather Service, with minimal overnight recovery language in the forecast discussions. Atlanta's urban heat island is particularly strong due to the city's rapid expansion and the replacement of tree cover and green space with impervious surfaces. Overnight temperatures in the urban core can run 7 to 10 degrees warmer than the surrounding suburban and rural areas. The latest run just came in, and it completely changed the picture for the upper Midwest. The GFS 12-hour update this morning has now shifted the northern edge of the significant heat into Wisconsin and parts of Minnesota for the June 21st through 23rd period. Minneapolis, which is forecast to reach the low to mid-90s by this weekend, is looking at overnight lows approaching 70 degrees, values that for that latitude and that point in June are exceptional. The Minnesota State Climatology Office has noted that the state's summer nights have warmed measurably over the past 5 decades, consistent with the national trend documented by Climate Central. Fargo, North Dakota is forecast to reach the upper 80s and lower 90s by Saturday, with overnight lows holding in the mid-60s. For a city that sits in the northern plains and is accustomed to cool summer nights, even those overnight temperatures represent an unusually warm pattern. And here is something I want you to hold in your mind as we head into this weekend. The National Weather Service point forecast for Boston, Massachusetts, a city that sits at latitude 42 degrees north, well into the northern mid-latitudes, and that benefits from Atlantic marine influence, shows overnight lows approaching or exceeding 70 degrees this Saturday night. Boston's historical normal overnight low for the third week of June is approximately 60 degrees. A night above 70 degrees in Boston at this point in the calendar year is not just warm, it is a significant departure from what that city's climate has historically provided. When the bodies of water that normally moderate temperature, the Great Lakes, the Atlantic Ocean, Lake Michigan, are too warm themselves to provide cooling, the buffer disappears, and the ocean surface temperatures off the northeast coast are running above normal right now, consistent with the marine heatwave signal that the Weather West analysis identified along the west coast, and that is present in varying degrees across multiple ocean basins. The El Nino connection to ocean temperatures is direct. Warmer equatorial Pacific water changes the global atmospheric circulation, and one of the downstream effects is anomalously warm sea surface temperatures in other ocean basins. That feedback is already showing up in the Atlantic, in the Pacific Northwest, and in the Gulf waters south of the United States. Warmer water means a warmer atmosphere above it, and a warmer atmosphere means warmer nights. I think we are looking at one of the most significant early summer heat events in terms of overnight conditions that the eastern United States has seen in the modern era. And with a super El Nino developing behind it, building strength through August and September and October, the overnight heat story is not going to end with this week's event. It is just beginning. Stay subscribed, stay informed, and check on the people around you who are most vulnerable to what is building outside tonight.